U.S. Army Second Lieutenant William Hargis was there at D-Day, June 6, 1944. The invasion of Europe at Normandy Beach was one of the costliest offensives of World War II in terms of human lives. The men of our armed forces never knew where fate would send them. Men like Lieutenant Bill Hargis just knew that they were going to war. He left his home for the holidays in December 1943.
We got on a ship pretty close to Christmas time that year, and I believe the ship was the George Washington. It was a big ship, had a lot of room underneath, and 2 stories out of the water. And a lot of the enlisted men stayed and got real seasick. It was like that very much for probably 10 or 12 days till we got to Europe. And then our unit got on some narrow gauge trains and went to close to this little town that I was stationed in, Budleigh, Salterton, right on the coast in England. And we stayed there for about 5 months and trained for the invasion. June the 6th, 1944, it started before daylight, and we came in, it was still wasn't real bright. Really, I should have known, I guess, but I was not knowing it wasn't another practice until we got the boat taking us in, those landing craft infantry boats. They were bringing dead bodies back at the same time we were going in. So I knew then that it wasn't another practice. And also at that time, I should have known from this too, but there were more airplanes in the air at that time than I'd ever seen at one time. I don't see how they kept them running together. But we were prepared, I think. They purposely didn't tell everybody because of security reasons, I think mostly. A lot of times, any kind of invasion, to me it's not an invasion if everybody knows it. I went in on the 3rd wave, and of course paratroopers had gone in before that, and I guess you'd say they had softened up the situation. Of course, there was still a lot of ammunition and a lot of people getting killed. When the gate flops open, you head out to get forward as fast as you can. Then I had a rifle on me at that time, and I had grenades. The soldiers that went in before the 3rd wave had put some ropes up where we could go through it and not be as likely to step on bombs. A lot of them got killed by landmines and things like that. It's hard to keep like that when there's all those things going on. It's hard to keep your main point all the time too, especially when some of your mates are not there anymore because they were killed or wounded.
Bill Hargis's first duty on the beaches of Normandy was an assignment that today's 18-year-olds could never comprehend.
When I was in battalion headquarters there, I was in grave reconnaissance, and that's where I was so close to the people that were killed there, and they were dead soldiers as far as you could see, and just in line. The bodies were in a line. That was one thing that I tried to forget as much as anything else, especially because if you've never, didn't have any embalming or anything like that over there, and that's to me, the worst smell that I've ever smelled. I've been around all kind of dead animals, but never anything like that before. I was in charge of getting the bodies lined up where we had them, and then being sure we had some identification on each one, mainly their dog tags. In fact, that's about the only identification we had was dog tags.
After 4 days of grave reconnaissance, and with the Allies' foothold on the beach firmly established, Bill and his platoon pushed forward and upwards from the low beaches to higher ground.
And then when we got out of the water area, we got in the hedgerows, and the hedgerows were little fields with hedges around the edge of the field. And a lot of the enemy was in those hedgerows, and they shot at us on going and coming, and a lot of our men were killed that way too.
In the hedgerows, Bill's war experience and his physical body were permanently altered. He left his blood on that sacred ground.
I was close to Cherbourg, a bigger town there, and just inside of it when I got shot. I was running forward, and I got shot, hit me in the arm. It felt like at first it hit me in the stomach, but it knocked me down. And after I got control of myself, I knew it was my arm, and that's when I thought about I might be a dead hero instead of a live survivor. And the Lord blessed me in that I didn't bleed much, even though it shot my left arm in two. It was probably early in the afternoon. We were going forward, and after I was shot, I knew I couldn't continue to go on with the men, so I told them to keep going forward. I was afraid of two things. One, I was afraid of them getting shot, and another thing, I was felt like I could do more by moving forward and going on to help take this town. And I stayed there until late in the evening. I had took my belt off and made my arm a sling, and I couldn't do much doctoring on it. I had some sulfur powder, but I couldn't get to it. Most of the part on the back of my arm was where the bullet tore out. And late that evening, I saw some French people come out of I guess it was a hole under the ground where they had, anyway, went back in later. And I went over to them, and they were friendly. I guess they knew it. I was, because later they told me which way the Amerikaners were and which way the Dutch, they called the Germans Dutch were. And they helped me doctor my arm with my sulfur, and I gave them some K rations I had, and they offered me some cognac, their drink they had back then, and I took a little bit of their cognac just to be friendly to them. And at dusk, they left me. They went somewhere back under the ground. When daylight came, they had motioned me back to the way to go to where the Americans was, and I went back to the aid station, and there were a lot of soldiers there that were worse condition than I was, even though my left arm was shot in two. So I waited for some time before I got first aid on my arm, and then I guess it was the next day. Anyway, sometime soon thereafter, I went on a plane back over to England, and there they put a cast on my arm. One day the doctor came by and asked me, I had a picture of my wife on the table there, and he asked me, I would like to go see her. And I told him it wasn't anything that would suit me better. So he said, I got to go on a ship, on a plane, came back to the United States, and I was back in the first part of July, I think it was. So the Lord blessed me in a lot of ways. I don't know, war kind of changes, makes things look different when you get to see it, the real thing like it is. Yeah, I wrote my wife every day when I was in the Army, even when I was in combat, I think. A lot of times I had to write in foxholes and different situations, but that may be one reason I got back.
Lieutenant Bill Hargis knows how fortunate he was to have survived that fateful campaign to invade Europe through the beaches of Normandy. Thanks to his and so many others' heroism, 56 years later, the world has a different face.
I think that it was a victory that the United States won, and if we hadn't, I don't know what the situation would be today. It would be a lot different. And I think that ones in charge of the Normandy invasion were wise people. If they hadn't been, it wouldn't have worked out like it did. I was with our company, and General Eisenhower came by and inspected us, and he actually talked to me and asked me if, he asked me how our men's feet were. He was concerned about us traveling on foot. And I thought it was an honor for me to, at that time I didn't think of it that way, but now I look back, it's an honor to see that man in that kind of, and that he was concerned about all the men.
5,200 American soldiers died during the Normandy invasion. Bill Hargis knows what the American soldier was really made of.
I think mostly was what was in his mind and his heart, more so than it was the uniform. Of course, all the different branches of service had a different kind of uniform. And what described the American soldier, he was a man that was trained for combat and also was trained for service. One thing, we never did know which one was going to be next. And it wasn't a sacrifice of any particular individual. But I think that if we had known that it was going to be that many, it might have been a different situation. The outfit I was in was a regular Army outfit, and those fellows did a lot of things like drinking and all kind of bad language and I don't know what else, but anyway, when we got in combat, I didn't see any soldiers then that didn't believe in prayer and didn't believe in God. I don't feel like I was a hero, but I'm thankful I was a survivor. And I feel like those young boys that gave their life, even a lot of them without much training, were the ones to be remembered for what they did. The flag means, to me, it represents my country that I feel like all Americans should honor and be thankful for. And to me, it stands for a lot for those fellows that gave their life, that we might have freedom. And it wasn't just a few of them. It was thousands of young men that didn't come back. I don't feel like I was a hero, but I'm thankful I was a survivor.